It is useful skill. Let's I'll share my screen. So let's say, I'll even start from the very beginning. Let's remove this. Now, say we want to start a new project. We'll do make directory, git practice, and then we'll cd git practice. And now, if I type in, lots of you will have Git already installed on your computer. If you have a Mac, I think it's installed with Xcode. You can also just, I don't know off the top of my head how to install it. I think you probably can do like brew install git. But you can just, if you type git, right, then you can see whether or not it's installed. What will it do for you? It allows you to, there's a couple things. One thing is, as we'll see, it allows you to track the history of a project. And basically, imagine if every single time you saved like a Microsoft Word document, you said what was done. It's like saving another version of it, and you record what occurred. So what that does is it tells you like the whole history of the project, and then you can see what changes occurred with each change that you make. And then the other thing is sharing, right? So we'll see that you can push up to to the cloud, and someone else can pull that down onto their computer. So it's really good for sharing. But even if you're not sharing and using a project, it's building a project with other people, it's very good for just saving the different versions of it. And then of course what's super useful about that is, well, if one of these versions introduces a new bug, you can always go backwards to the version where it was working, right? Or if you discover a bug, you can go look at where was that change made and what was the git commit message and why did they make that change. And that will give you a lot of clues as to what's going on. So anyway, I type in git right here, and you can see here's are the different commands that we can do, clone, init. This is the one we want, create an empty git repository or reinitialize an existing one. So you just type git init for initialize, right? Press return, and you can see what it says, right? Initialize an empty git repository in, and then this is my folder, users, Jeffrey Katz, blah, blah, Jigsaw curriculum, git practice, .git. This is just an empty directory. You could cd into it, and it has like your different files for it, but you never interact with this directly. But this is where everything's stored here. So let's get out of here. Yeah, so generally, you don't look at the .git thing, but that is what's, creating a Git repository. When you push this up, when eventually we'll move this to the cloud, this is the folder that will have all of your commits and things like that. Okay, so now we'll do touch index.py. Just create, a new file, and then let's say if we did something like, make request, right? And then let's say there's just an API that we want to make a request to, right? And then we'll just do request.get the URL, and then let's put the URL as iTunes. I don't have a real one for you, but iTunes.com. All right. Now at this point, we can start to. What you want to do is add these changes, okay? And with Git, you can be very specific as to what changes you want to actually save and add to a commit. So first thing I do is normally type git status, and it's like almost typing ls, this ls command. It just allows you to look around and see what's going on. So you can see it says, hey, you haven't made any commits yet. We're on the branch main, whatever that means. These are untracked files, all right? Meaning Git does not really officially know anything about them, but we can use git add to include what will be committed. This is one thing to know. Git has very good kind of documentation, or the messages that it's trying to help you are very, very good. You just have to read them. So what does it tell us? It says nothing to add it to commit, but we can use git add to track them. So I can either add them all each individually, like this git add index. This DS stores junk. So I actually don't need to add it if I don't want to. It's just like junk produced by my Mac. And I can do git add and then the name of the file, press return, and then again we can kind of see the results. And notice what it's saying is this is a change, this index file is a change to be committed. All right? And it says we can do this to unstage it. So right now this is called staging, and then ultimately we'll make a commit. And then I'll just review what those things mean. So if I want to make a commit, I'll do git commit-m, and that will only add changes to the files that have been staged. Remember we already did git add that staged this file, all right, and the changes in here. And I'm going to do git commit-m, and m is for the message, and we'll say like add client add make request function to reach iTunes. Okay, and I press return, and now you can see again, this is the commit message, right? This is one file changed. We created a new file into Git, at least, called index.py. If you look at it, if I type git log, you can see this is the commit that we just made. Add make request function to reach iTunes. We just did this today, right? And then you can actually see it. If I do git show, it has a recording, right? These pluses means these are lines that I added, okay? And and then I did make requests, blah blah, and added this file. Okay, so let me explain that again. The main idea is, can I clear this? Let me see. Whiteboard. Oh, okay, over here. I think like the main kind of idea is, you have these different files. And then these are kind of unstaged or untracked changes. And then what you do is you have to decide what goes into staging. So this was like our index.py. All right, and now that will go into into staging. All right, and so we just move this one, this index.py into staging. Okay, I'll just put ind. All right, and how did we do that? We typed git add and the name of the file, index.py. This is the file that's been is kind of on the launch pad, right? It's on staging. So if I eventually do type git commit -m, the m is for add a commit message, and I say like add a make request method, the only thing that's going to be committed is what I have staged. Okay? Is what I've typed git add index, the name of the file. Okay? So, right, in order to actually save a version of something, to say, hey, this is my new version, what you'll need to do is two steps. The first thing is say what you want to add to that version, what you want to add ultimately to your commit. That goes into staging by doing git add, the name of the file, and then finally make the commit itself. Okay? Does this feel all right? Your questions about this? Yeah? Okay, cool. Then you can see, once I did that, so we did git add, git commit. Then what I did was I was like, I want to see a log, right? A history of all the changes I've made. You can just type git log, and that will show you a history of all the changes, starting with the most recent. So this is the most recent change I made. Let's do one more. Let's say we have we get back some data, and then we say let's do song.py. So let's say we have a song class song def init self, the name of the song, self.name equals name. Let's do, and let's also make a change here. Make a request to iTunes. Let's say this is going to be like reach Spotify, and that would be spotify.com. All right. What's the first thing I typically like to do is type in get status, right? Because that's normally like just look around. And it tells you where you are. So what does it say? This file, index.py, I've seen it before, right? It's in my commit that you just made, but it has been modified. All right? And now this file, song.py, I've never seen it before, but maybe you want to add it. If you want, you can add both of the files. We could go one by one, get add index.py, get add song.py. We can also add them all at once by typing get. You see what it says. No changes added to use get add, but you can use get add dash. You can do a couple things. You can do dot. Remember, dot means the current directory, so that will add all the files in the current directory. Normally what I do is dash capital A, because this includes files that not only have been created, but also files that have been deleted. It will track, gets a little weird where it won't always, if you just do get add dot, it will just be like, oh, you added these files. But any files that you deleted, it won't track that change unless you're very specific about it and do get add, I do cat dash capital A. Now if I type get status, let's see what's been added. Everything's been added. Everything is in stage, including even the DS store, which I could remove if I want to, but it's okay. And you can see, like, if we want to change our mind, we can do get restore dash stage in the name of the file. So if we want to get this thing, the DS store, out of staging because you don't want to commit it, we could just follow what it says. Dash staged dot DS. .ds store. I think I don't know. I might have just typed the wrong path, but it's okay. We'll just add it. So get status. We have this new file. We have this modified. We have this song file. We don't even need to do anything else at this point. We'll just make a commit. Get commit -m. We'll say add the reach connect Spotify and create song class. Okay, and now if we look at the git log, you can see here's our two commits. All right, it also says who did this, right? So I made the change. Why is this valuable? This way, if you look at the commit and you're still like confused, what does this code do? You can now, come up, Slack me or whatever, and we can talk about it. Right, so it's pretty good to know like who made the change. That way we can just ask them as well. But here's our original change, and then this is our second one. There's one other thing maybe to show you, one other git command, and that's diff. So let's say def reach, what's it called, like Bandcamp or something is the other one. URL. I'll just do the same thing. All right. So now if I type get status, it will tell me what's been modified, but lots of times what you want to do before you actually make a commit, you're going to push this up less times so other people can use it. You want to see, like, make sure you didn't just, make sure there's no like breakpoint in here, or that maybe there's just something you just accidentally changed. It's a good idea to see all the things that you have altered, right? And it tells me that I've modified this index.py, but it doesn't tell me what modifications I've made. So you can view that if you type get diff. All right, and now if I type get diff, you can see that I added, this is a plus, for I added these 4 lines. Let's say I delete something accidentally, right, and I type get diff, you can see that I deleted this. This is the difference since the last commit, all right? So you've added reach Bandcamp, you've removed this. Notice it thinks this is unchanged, Why is that? Because, well, I deleted these 3 lines and added these ones, but it thinks that, oh, you just deleted this. You just kept this and you just did something like this. Right? And I added it on top. Anyway, so it was saying, hey, this is unchanged, even though, we know we actually deleted it here and then we added it back in. But it's the same thing as saying it's unchanged. So anyway, the git diff is very useful for showing you all the changes you've made. And then you can be like, oh crap, I left a breakpoint in here. Delete the breakpoint, type git diff again. Right, now you can see it even tracks these spaces. So I don't really need these extra spaces here. Let's delete this. Type git diff again. Okay, this is a little better. Right, we have this one new line. Let's delete that. Okay, and now we're good. So now what do? We like where we are, right? This looks pretty good. We do git add. We can do git add the name of the file, index.py, or we can do -a, and then do git commit -m. -m is good. -m is for the message. I guess we'll just stay with it there. I'll say like add connection to Bandcamp API. And now take a look at the log, git log -2, and there we are. Oh, let's do git log all. So I just naturally did git log -2, but when I type git log, right, that shows me all 3 of them. I was naturally doing git log -2, which says only show the most 2 recent commits. So that's why it only showed me 2 of them initially. All these commands basically have flags, like options that they can go with, but if you do git log, that will show you all of them. And then remember, if you wanted to see what was specifically changed in the most recent commit, you can do git show, right? And that will show you everything that was changed in the most recent commit. You can also do git show and then just copy the commit. This is called a SHA. It's like just a string of numbers or characters. That's an identifier. It's like an ID of the commit. And I can do git show this one, and that will show me everything about Spotify. Okay, so that will show me these changes. And if I press space, then then I kind of see further. I also created the song class. People may be at this point. You may be if you're doing this, on your own. It might be a little confusing as to how to get out of this, because what Git did was it took you into something called Vim, or you see this less, but you can get out of this. You can get back to the terminal if you just type the letter Q. Or now you put see this colon here. I'll do I'm going to type escape, WQ. I just typed Q enough times, and then it got me out of there. That you can see it's putting me in something called Vim, but if you just type Q, don't panic. Just type the letter Q, lowercase q, and I got out of it. All right, so that's basically everything I wanted to show you. Just to review very quickly, git add to say what's in staging, git commit to actually make the commit message, oftentimes with a -m, then you want the quotation marks. Git status, right, to basically look around. It tells you what's been modified, things like that. Then git diff shows you more details, not just what files have been changed, but what specific changes have been made. And then git log to see a history of all the changes. And then finally git show to maybe look at an individual change, all right, and say, okay, this is what was actually made in this commit. Cool. All right, so let me deploy that. We have a little how HTML and CSS works. It's also we're going to be building APIs, and understanding the difference between APIs and a full website is very valuable. And basically the main difference is that with a full website, you're sending the data to kind of create HTML, but you're creating HTML with that information. So for example, we have ESPN. It's how are they creating this stuff dynamically? You can imagine this maybe connecting to an API, and then they use kind of the logo. Maybe that's probably stored in the database. Uh, the abbreviation of the team name is stored in the database, right? And then they use some styling, which is the CSS, to make it look a little bit nicer. All right. So the first thing that I want to talk about is like developer tools. So you can see the HTML. Give me 1 second. You can see the HTML of any page in a couple ways. One is you can click on, if I'm doing a right click here, or like a 2-finger click on the Mac, and then I can click view page source. Right? And now this is all the HTML on the page. And you can see this is actually a little bit of probably JavaScript, JSON data mixed in here. But this is the HTML, this is some JavaScript right here. But you can see any of the HTML on the page. You can, a little bit more useful than that is if you click on inspect, this brings up the developer tools. And it's pretty nice to be able to get a sense of just how a page is laid out. All right. So you can see I'm hovering over the section pane main, right? And it's just, and now I can click on it, and that's identifying this pane. And now I can like delete it even if I want to. And it's just deleting it on my computer, and I can always refresh it, right? And get back to it. So like a good way to just see, if I like design a web page or whatever, normally what I do is I go to other web pages that are similar to the type of business I'm, developing for, getting inspiration from, and then just dig around and see how is this page actually organized. What's most important is like the grid, right? Like understanding the structure of the page. Like for instance, you can see that this has this header wrapper that probably identifies this div right here, which we'll talk about, that identifies this top section, right? Even though I don't see this, you do see this section right here. And then down in the pane main, that's below this top section, you can see this component, right? And then this is like another section, probably over to the right here. This, so like getting a sense of that is pretty useful. All right. This may seem like overwhelming, but there's really just like 6 elements that you really need to understand. So we can go through them. All right. And the most important one is divs. Divs and sections are basically the same thing. A div is like a box, essentially, right? You can see that this whole thing, this global viewport or whatever, is a div. This scorecard is technically a section, but it's wrapped in a div, right? So here they're creating a box up at the top. Then they have this main box over here. This thing with the top headlines, if I inspect that, right, that's another div, headline stack, okay? So when you think of a web page, like you can really just think of the various boxes that is contained in. Now, in terms of writing some HTML, we'll do practice HTML. And I'll do index.html and just do code dot. And now you can just start working with some of this stuff. So, if we want, we can have a div, right? And you can see this is the ending and closing tags. So it just it has these kind of alligator things, right? The less than, greater than. And this opens the tag at the end of this, and then this part is closing the tag. And the only difference is this has the / or the whatever slash this is. And you can just type in like hello world. All right. This is probably fine. And now we can open it. I'll just do open dot. I'll double click, and you can see here's my beautiful HTML. We are ready to go with a website. All right, and here's the div right here. Other tags, this is one of them, is the div. Other ones is the list. So this is, by the way, notice how I did this. I just typed UL, and then I pressed tab. And it created the rest of the kind of boilerplate for me. And so this is UL stands for unordered list. It's just whenever you see the bullet points. So we can say like maybe our sports teams, the Eagles, the Giants, right? Sorry for the sports metaphors. And the Giants and whoever else, Seattle. Okay, and then again, we can just refresh. And now notice, right, there's bullet points here because it's an unordered list. If you change it to an ordered list, then that will be an OL. So I'll talk a little bit more about this. So this just changes it to 1, 2, 3. Most of the time you're working with unordered lists, right? Unordered, basically, if there's no ranking, then it's like an unordered list. Like, for example, going back to the page, there's not really a ranking probably between these games. I mean, maybe there is if they're sorted by the time. Maybe that's what it is. But it's probably an unordered list is the way I would think of this. But this does count as a list because it's a list of elements. You can see with the unordered list, there's really two components, two different kinds of tags. One is beginning and ending the list, and the other one is each element in the list, right? So we begin the list, we end the list, and now we begin this element, the Eagles, and end it with the /li, right? Begin this element, end it, right? Begin and end it. So we covered two of these. The other one we can think of is paragraph, right? Paragraph is simple. If you're going to write some text here, like this is probably a paragraph, I wonder. Yeah, you see that? They put a P tag right here. And now, where do they write? Michigan and Texas will do well. All right? And again, what we're doing is you're just describing the content. This isn't really doing too much styling for you. That's more CSS and other components. But this is, you still want a way to describe and organize your text. And then eventually you will say something like, I want all the paragraphs to be in this font, in this style, right? And because you describe them the same way, you label them properly, it's easy for you to attach rules to these labels. Is there a way to specify a list item with 1.1, 1.2, etc.? I don't know. I don't know if you can do that automatically. You may use JavaScript to do something like that. I'm not sure. Probably not out of the box with HTML, but there are JavaScript libraries oftentimes you can use, and JavaScript is used to really modify your HTML programmatically. So, you can do that. Just to give you an example, you see the console here. You can, inspect an element and say, if we try to get this thing, when you use JavaScript, right, it has a representation of your entire web page here. And then you can do something like it's been a while since I wrote JavaScript. Get element, by class name. So you can select the element. This is my element. And then you see that this should have identified this particular element. And then I can do probably element dot, I forget if it's remove or hide. I can't remember. But that would, theoretically remove that. If anyone remembers, just tell me. Remove? Oh well, I can't remember. But that will hide it. So anyway, for custom types of things, you can typically do that. Cool. All right, so our elements. We have div, we have p, we have ul. Right, div is basically our box, paragraph is paragraph. This is an unordered list. Remember, you have the list elements. Two other ones that are key. One is an image. Okay, so with the image, you can see we have the source. The source is where the image lives, either on your computer or on someone else's computer, meaning on the web. So for instance, what I just did here was I said copy link address, right? And this is where the image lives. Oh shoot, not quite, is it? I would think so. Cat image. Okay. Let's click on this. And can I get the image address? Copy image address. Okay. Is that okay? This appears to be where the image lives. I've never seen this data image thing before, but I guess that works. And let's see if I just plug this in here, and then I do open. You see that? And there's the image of my cat. So what's happening here is we're saying image, and then this is the source. This is an HTML attribute, right? And it has source equals. And again, how do I kind of know that? Right, I know it because I just literally did IMG and then press tab, and notice it's filling this part out for me. So I need to still fill in the HTML attribute, and then the alt is like the alt text, right? If the image fails, right, if it's deleted from this page or it goes down, or say you have a person who can't see, you need to make it more accessible, it's good to have this alternate text, the cat image stuff right there. And then finally, so we covered 4. The main one to know, which one can I now remember it, is, href. A tag. Okay, there we go. So this is the most important one. So this is what makes the web. A web is a link. So, for instance, if I want to have, you go to my website and I want to say, to see more information, go here. So I'll put the address, and that's the href attribute, and this is where you'll go when you click on the page, and then here is the actual text that you'll see. So whenever you click on this text, then it will take you to this page. So go to ESPN for more. Now let's refresh. All right. So notice, only ESPN has the link. Why is that? Because I have the opening tag, right? The A tag, and then I closed it here, right? I'm doing this /A. Then I have the HTML attribute, right, which is the link, and saying, hey, when they click here, go to this page, and that takes me there. So that is, you know what I mean? Like if you think about it, like all this stuff are various links in a UL or LI. And what you can do is you can begin to combine these types of things. So you can say like, all right, well, let's make this link in a LI element, right? And so now you can see, let's think about the structure of the page. We have our UL, right, our unordered list, and then I have my element. And in my element, I have an A tag. So we can nest these various HTML attributes. And really probably the way it would work is you have a div, and inside the div, you have an unordered list. And what you want to do is you want to keep your syntax correct, meaning tab it properly. So because it makes it easier for you to code and see visually where that this UL is contained in this div, right? And that here you have these various LIs. So again, why is this stuff useful? Well, you may be developing data dashboards in the future, in which case we'll use libraries that are similar to that are based off of HTML. And then you may be scraping pages. So understanding, and we'll go through scraping, and so understanding, okay, how do we get this element? You'll need to target it by saying, okay, give me the A tag inside this LI, right? And maybe pull out the link that it is in this A tag, right? That way I kind of have it and maybe can go to it. Or pull out the text from here too. Okay? All right, so those are the main components. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I really missed. Headers, paragraphs, lists, anchors. Anchors are the hrefs, images, divs. Yeah, we didn't talk about headers as the only one I missed. Headers is just stands for kind of like a heading, and it's just there to indicate like the most kind of hierarchy of importance on the page. Typically, there should only be one H1 on the page, so H1 is like most important, and then you can have multiple H2s. So for example, back to ESPN, maybe this would be the H1. All right, I'm not sure. You can see they actually made it an H2 logo header. But this might be, in my view, maybe this would be the H1 because it seems like the most important thing on the page. It's only listed once. Other things like this could be an H3. I'm not sure. Let's see. Okay, they made it an H2. All right. So why? You can see that this is like a heading different from, just kind of actual text, like paragraph text. Let's look at this one. Right, another H2. So they just like using H2s. But you can have multiple H2s on the page, but you should typically only have one H1 because there's only one thing that's the most important. All right, and the way to do it is you just H1, ESPN, and then H2, game today. And we refresh. Right, and you can see that it does reflect that in terms of the size, but you'll style it yourselves. All right, and we'll show you ways to do that. All right, cool. So I'll deploy the stuff on HTML. All right, so we'll be using Flask. This is like production grade. People use Flask all the time. It's also very similar to other frameworks. So if some of you have heard of like Fast API, getting started with Flask and then moving to Fast API is totally within your, will not be hard for you at all. How do we do it? Let me make a new directory. Let's call this my Flask app. And now we basically can just do what it says. All right. So I'm going to touch index.py and open up my code editor. And then here's my index.py. Now this is using like the Flask library. So I probably would have had to do something like pip3 install Flask and make sure that's installed. You can see here that I already have it installed, so I'm in good shape. Now what's next? So what's telling me to do is say from the Flask library, import the Flask class. Okay, so you can imagine, right, that this says like class Flask, and it has like, the init function. And now this name actually references the name of the file, so the index file. And this is just a Python variable that will give you the name of the file. So it's basically saying, okay, this is where our Flask application, we're going to create our Flask application, and it's defined in this file. And now let's take a look at this. Actually, let's just see this. I'm going to do this. I say app/hello world. So I'm going to run this. Let me do this one way. Do this. I'll do app.run, parentheses. And now I'll press Python 3 index.py. And you can see it says, hey, this thing is running, and it's running on this port. So I'm going to command click on this, and here we see our text of when I visit port 5000, it gets me back hello world. So let's just understand a little bit more what's going on here. We're doing app.route/. What this means is when you go, this is the root URL, kind of like when we went to, like ESPN.com, right? This is really like ESPN.com/ their equivalent, And now that takes me to, spits back some text. It's the same thing here. We're defining these rules saying when you go to the root URL, return this text. In fact, like you can also put some HTML here and do like hello world and make that, I have to shut this down first and redo it. And now you see, right, that you're sending back text, but your browser reads it as HTML. And what you're really doing is you're saying, when you go to this route, to the slash route, I want you to execute this function. So call the hello world function. And that's why, we have like a return value here, right? If you forget the return value, it won't work. This at thing, this may feel a little weird. Like, what is this at thing? This is called a decorator. What that means is it's basically a wrapper around the succeeding function. So the way that these two things get attached is with this decorator. And what is kind of like equivalent to is almost as if you pass the hello world function in as the second argument. So if that makes sense to you, if it's like app.route, when you go to slash, I want you to call this function. I don't think this will work if I tried it. I'm curious though. I've never tried that. It doesn't work. But this is basically what's going on, right? What I did, the right way to do it is to app.route call, say when you reach the slash, I want you to spit out hello world. Let's do it one more. Let's say we do app.route when you hit something like NHL, we'll say like welcome to NHL. Again, I'll have to shut this down. So right now it is shut down. I'm doing Python 3. Oh, weird. Okay, it says view function mapping is overriding an existing endpoint function, hello world. What's going on here? What it's saying is I can't have the same function twice. Okay, view function mapping is overriding an existing endpoint hello world. So you don't want these routes to overwrite one another. We also don't want these functions to overwrite one another. So do hello NHL. And then do this. So now let's think about it. I go to slash. That runs this function, calls hello world. Now I'll go to slash NHL, right? What does that do? See, it goes down here, sees this match, slash NHL, calls this function, welcome to NHL, returns that, okay? So this is how we basically are, going to build websites, is have these various rules, and then it's just a set of rules. When this occurs, run this code. When this occurs, run that code. This component, just to walk through this, right, just to review, we're importing the Flask class, then we're creating an instance of a Flask application, assigning it to app, right, so this represents our whole web application, and then we're saying this app function, this app instance has a method called route that we're saying, route a request to the slash to this function, to call this function. Wrap a request to NHL. When someone makes a request to NHL, call this function. Right? So that's why when we go to these various endpoints, this is what the return value is. Let me take a look at the questions. What about, the other methods like get versus post? Yeah, I forget if it's in here. I think it's here. Okay, so the method parameters defaults to get automatically. However, you can, I think one of the options probably is when there's a post method. I forget what it would be exactly. But you can say app route, not a get method, but it might be something like this. Like method, when the method is post, to call a separate function. I never, you can see I'm pretty unfamiliar with it. As when do you use post methods? When someone's trying to submit a form on your page. As data engineers, we don't use that too much because we're just serving back data. People aren't really, necessarily authenticating, but it's pretty easy to get to take a look at. Other things I want to show you, you can see I'm calling app.run here, right? This is a line that actually starts the server running and listening. So if this thing is down, if I press Control C here, you're no longer listening for requests. So if you try to like your website's not there listening anymore, you need this to run it, right? I'm just running Python 3 index.py. You can see it doesn't exit the file when it's complete. Instead, it's waiting for requests. The other thing is, because I already did this app.run, the other thing is, oftentimes you want to do something like debug equals true. Okay? What this will do is, let's just shut this down. Remember previously, I wasn't able to make updates to the page. If anytime I made an update, I would have to shut this down, press Control C, shut it down, and then make the update. And then the update would be applied. Now, because I have this debug equals true, I can update this, just save it, refresh, and you see immediately it's updated. Okay? So welcome to whatever. I press save here, and then I'm going to refresh over here, make another request, and it sends back welcome to whatever. Okay? So what you're effectively doing here is you're building, like an API, right? Because here we're returning HTML, but you could imagine returning JSON. I'm trying to think how to do that. I think you have to import the JSONify method. And now if I want to, and I want to return like NHL/players, we'll do NHL players, and then I can return maybe like a list of dictionaries. So this will be name, Crosby, name, Lemieux. Okay, and now this will break, I think. Oh, sorry, we want to go to NHL. First of all, notice the error message. The requested URL was not found on the server, right? What is this saying? It's saying, hey, you made a request to /NHL, but I changed the route. There is no /NHL here, right? So we have a mismatch between what I'm requesting and what's being seen right here, okay? It comes to the end of the list, sees there is no /NHL, and it breaks. What I need to do is go to /NHL/players. I think this will still break. Oh, no, it worked. Actually, we're fine. So this is basically like returning a JSON API, right? We have a list of dictionaries which have my attributes. I thought that in the years past, you had to do JSONify and put that, like return your data in that. And what that does is, you can't send like Python across the wires of the internet. All you can do is send a string, So really what you're sending here is, like kind of text that looks like a list of dictionaries. And that's what JSONify does, is it converts your Python into like basically like this, where it's it converts your Python into this. And this is what you send across the internet, is a string. But apparently Flask has been updated, it seems like, so that it's going to do this for us for free. And we no longer have to use the JSONify. All right, so you can see what's going on, right? We're basically, you can imagine that as long as I return, right, like a list of dictionaries, I'm able to, kind of return an API, and now someone else, maybe from a separate file or whatever, can go to can go and maybe request, right? So it'll be like import, I'm not sure if I can do that. Let's see. Import requests, request.get. What's the URL we should get? Localhost 5000. Just put URL here. And the URL will be like that. Okay. And that will be /NHL/players, and that'll be a response, and just do response.json. I'll call these players. and then we'll just do Python 3-i index.py, and that seemed to have worked. So you guys get that? So what was the point here? The point is like, remember, we've been like making requests to API for a long time, right? We've been like going to some Spotify.com/songs or whatever and getting back some data. And now what we're doing is we're showing what goes on, on Spotify's computers when you make a request there. What's really happening is it's has something like this. When you go to, /Spotify or /songs, I'm going to return some data from you. Now, where is it getting this data from? From the database. Probably doing something like, import scicop g2, and then scicop g2 dot connection. I think it's dot connect, and then connection dot cursor, and then cursor dot execute. Select all from players, right? And then cursor dot fetch all, and return this data. Return this data back as JSON, and that's what's happening. When you make a request to a website, really what you're doing is you're making a request. You hit their computer to like /NHL/players. It's going to call this function and then run through the code to probably, hit the database and send back some JSON to you. Okay? And whether or not this is JSON or HTML actually is not a huge deal, right? You're asking for the information. Okay, so this is both how websites are made, right? They're going to hit the database, give you back the information, and it's how, APIs are made as well. Let me see. Questions about this. How does it handle query parameters if there are any? That's a good question. Okay. Yeah, we can show you this. It's a great question. So let's say we just want information on the player who's passed through, So here's what we can do. You'll do, here's the player name, okay? And then actually what we'll do here is, this is the player name, and then we'll just return the player name. So if you go to, so I'm over here, run Python 3 index, and now what will we do? We're going to NHL/players/ Crosby. NHL/players/ Crosby. Again, notice I spit out Crosby. If I put in Bob, it spits out Bob. So why is this valuable? Because what we can do is now we can change our code so it's like, remember, you put in the name here. So this is the parameter. This part's flexible. There's like an argument to your URL. Whatever you put in here, we're going to call our function again and pass through that value as the argument. Now what we can do, select all from players where the name equals, right, the name that's passed through. You can use an F. You shouldn't use an F string, but just for now, you can do that. So it can now take this value from the URL, right? Call the function, call the select statement, right? And now only do it where that name equals that value, get the results, right? And then it would be information about Bob or whoever you're passing through here. How does this normally work? Really, you're passing through the ID. You'll pass through like value 100 or whatever, and it'll be select, why do I keep doing that? It'll be select all from the players where the ID equals that ID. And then return the results. Is app a class method? Okay, request body form values as well. Yeah, I'll get to that in a second. Okay, is app a class variable? No, app's not a class variable. This is using something called the at instance. This is called a decorator. What this means is it decorates the method that directly follows it. So this app.route slash is decorating hello world. So route is an instance method. What's the instance? It's an instance of your Flask application, right? So Flask is like, a class. It's a factory that produces Flask applications. This is our Flask app right here. Every time we run index.py, it's going to create a new instance, and then it's going to define these routes. The app.route thing, slash, this is decorating the hello world function. It takes a normal function, right? And it says, now we're going to kind of give it some functionality so that when you call this / here, we will run this function. When you call NHL/player/name, we will call this function. All right. So it's called a decorator, but the app is an instance, right? Route is a method, is an instance method on this instance, and this method is decorating the function. And maybe a way to think of it, the way I kind of think about it, is you're almost like passing through the hello world function. And this is like setting it up. It's not actually calling the function. It's just setting up the functionality that like when someone visits this, I will call this function here. The other question was, what about other kinds of parameters? Well, really good example of this would be like query parameters. Like if they say, remember we have like this limit equals 5. Like these are our query parameters when you call a function. So the way you can do that is, I think is there a request? Okay, request object. Yeah. Let's put this here. I'm going to put a breakpoint right here. So we can pause this, just like we can pause anything else. We can put a breakpoint in our code. And now we'll go to NHL player /name. That will call this function and hit our breakpoint. So I think we're good. I'm going to refresh. And I broke it. Hold on. Okay, look at it. You see how it's paused right now? So what I did was I put a breakpoint in this, in NHL, I put a breakpoint right here, and then I triggered the breakpoint by calling the method. How do I call this method NHL players? I have to make a request, right, to NHL players 100 /NHL players, right? This can be anything. And so it calls this function, hits my breakpoint. Now if you look here, you can see I'm in the breakpoint, right? I'm right before this line, name Crosby. Now I can look at the request object, and you can see information about the request, right? Someone went to this URL and did limit 5. And now if I do request.params, I'm wrong. What is it, dir? Request dot, I would think it's something like parameters. Path, maybe someone else knows. Host URL, but I don't see it. So I might have to look it up. But basically you can get, the question was, how do we get these query parameters, right? This like limit equals 5. And the way I think you do it is by using the request object. So for the
security string.
What's it called? Request.query?
Security string is one of those.
Yeah.
Maybe
Okay, so this is close, right? I'm sure there's a better way, like something that would give me that, but you can start to see, right, that we can get this information. Args, maybe it's args. Yeah, it's great. We're closer. Maybe this is how you get it back. I'm not sure. If I do dict. Yeah, that's pretty good. So we can do it that way, I guess. I'm sure there's probably another way, but right here I'm getting back like the limit 5. So you can take this stuff, and then you can when you make the select all from players where name equals the name, and you can do like limit, and get back the limit here. Right? There are other ways, right? But you can use this information to construct your query to SQL. Okay, and now what is the question param? I think it's param. What is this thing? What is this guy?
Yeah. Where's that name coming from? Like an
Yeah.
environment variable?
This name is whenever you create. If you just print this is like a Python thing where okay. Yeah, this is actually a little harder to explain. Let me do it this way. I'm going to import sample. Okay, so I'm importing sample, and sample is going to run. It's going to get imported. It's going to run the file and then print this out. I'm going to call index.py, Python3 index.py. Okay, now what got printed out? Sample got printed out. Okay, so why does sample get printed out? Because I'm importing sample. It goes here. It says, what is the name? Name means what is the name of the file. But there's an exception to that where when you're directly running, this only works because I'm running Python3 index.py and it's importing sample, and samples, this is the name of the file. However, if I did this for let's print out index.py, that's going to change things. Or maybe a better example is if I directly run sample, now notice the name printed out is main. So why is that the case? Because this value will take on the value main when it is the file directly being run. Okay? Otherwise, it's just the name of the file. So oftentimes in code, you may see something like if name equals main, right? Then do app.run, debug equals true. Why is it doing that? It's basically saying, hey, only when you are directly doing Python3 index.py do I want you to boot up the Flask app. In other cases, let's say if sample is importing from index, import all, right? We're just trying to import some functions maybe here, right? And so we don't want to, hit this file and then just start listening and pause my whole application. Only do this if I'm directly running this file. In that case, whatever file I'm running, directly running, meaning I'm doing like Python3 index.py, because I'm doing Python3 index.py, this file index is going to have the name here is going to be main, right? If I do run sample, the name in this file will be index. Just like we saw when I ran index and did import sample, the name was sample, but when I directly run sample, the name is main. So it's a little confusing type of thing, but that's how that works. Yeah.
So you're not actually giving it like the name of a project.
No, it's more like a location, I guess, to me.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is required. Like this is just how it's built. Is to get this value. Okay, so what are the main things to remember? So we import Flask. We create an instance, right, of a Flask application. These are called the routes, right? This is one route. This is a second route. And this entire file is called like the controller. Okay? It's like a dispatch, people can think of it as like a phone dispatch, but anyway, so it's basically like when someone makes a request to / run this function, when someone makes a request to this, run this function, okay? If you have a mismatch, if you hit the wrong function, right, it will tell you. It will say, right, we'll get that error message. Like now if I do /NHL, what will it do? It's going to make the request, go down through the list, not see any matches, and break, right? And it gives me the error 404 not found, right? The request URL was not found on the server. You can see the error messages here. What if you write some like bad Python, like raise, whatever. I think this, and now we want to see this problem. We'll go to, first we have to kind of trigger it. So /NHL/players/ whatever, Bob. And notice it's giving me the error message here. Exceptions must derive from base exception. I also tend to look at them directly in the console. And you can see, this is kind of junk, but now this is my code, right? app.flask, app.py, right? I didn't write any of this. This is in my site packages. But this I wrote, index.py line 16 in NHL players. So in this saying raise hello, exceptions must derive from base exception. So now what would I do? Go to line 16, right? In the NHL players function, which is what it says, right? So this is how you can debug here. And then just remember you can also put a breakpoint. And then again, you'll just need to trigger that breakpoint if you want to do that. We also saw how you can pass, this is a parameter, right? Pass a parameter through. You use the alligator stuff, okay? And then this is the name. Whatever value this is has to line up to the argument name, okay? And then that, we can have this, when you call the function, it will pass this through as an argument to the method, and then I can use that, for example, in a query. If you want to redirect, if you want to redirect, how do we do that? There is a redirect method from Flask. You can see that. And then this redirect, you won't be able to return. You probably have to do like redirect to slash. I can just do redirect to slash. So when someone goes here, we can then redirect to a different endpoint. So I think that's probably it. Let me see. Oh, maybe I still have to return something. I don't know. Do I return redirect? I'm not sure. It's been a while. Oh, that worked. So I went to /NHL/players/Bob, right? It makes the request, hits this, and then it says, oh, I better redirect. I did it wrong. NHL/players/Bob makes the request and redirects me to 5,000. Why would you do that? That happens like when you sign up for something. You click sign up and then it redirects you to like whatever, your Facebook news feed or something like that. You can use redirect. Again, we don't really use redirect. You do that for web development more than like building an API. But you can see that these are these different methods available to you that Flask has built into it. So the main ones you'll use is Flask and probably request. And it seems like we don't need to use just JSONify. We can simply return a list of dictionaries. Right. /NHL/players. Okay, and that worked. Cool. All right, I'll let you all get started on this before is. Okay, so this is what we've done so far, which is like have this, you hit this route, right? The route is like the path, right? The slash. The whole file, and I guess it's, hold on. So just to be like very, whatever, specific about these, this is the path, and then I guess we'd say like the route, I don't know if you'd call this kind of setting this up, I guess the route, I'd have to think about that. And then oftentimes people call this the action, like when you hit this route, you call this function. That can be called like an action. And then the whole file that establishes this is called the controller, right? Like this whole file that has these different routes is called the controller. All right. So far, right, basically what we're doing is let we did something like this. App equals Flask, right? And then we pass through the dunder name. Okay, where this is just the name of the file, right? Or when we call it directly, right, it's that value main. And then we call this run it, Python 3, index.py. That will call this app.run, debug true. The name of the file, because we're running it directly, is main, so this will get run. And we can see we're here. And then this does this hello world. And what else? I think we are pretty good. You know, it renders back this HTML. So normally, you don't just like put, you guys saw how long the HTML can be. So you're not just going to write all that in a function. That would be not fun at all. So instead what you'll do is you'll create, you know, a folder, like probably views, and just put your HTML file in there. So let's do that. We have a folder, call it views. And then inside the folder, we can put a file called like index.html. Okay, and then, you know, you can have our h1, hello everyone, or let's do ESPN, right? And then we have, you know, div, right? And then let's have a paragraph. Why am I doing it this way? Paragraph, worldwide leader in sports. All right. So, okay. Now, what we want to do is instead of just spit, you know, currently it says when you go to app.route / go to hello, you know, spit out hello world. Instead, what we can do is instead of returning this string, we can say we want to basically return this file, index.html. Basically, like read the contents of this file and then send the contents of the file back as a string. So there's a function that will do that for us, and it's render template. Okay, and we can just put the name of the file, index.html. I don't think we need the /. So we are importing this function render template from the Flask library, and then this time, instead of just spitting back kind of whatever we say, it's going to read the contents of this file in the views folder. I think it always uses views by default. So we'll look for it, find it, and then spit this back out, I hope. Let's see. Actually, it might have already done it. Because we have the debug equals true, it should get our live updates. So if I refresh this, oh, template not found, index.html. It could be that I need to do this, that I do need to specify the name of the folder. So here I'm saying, same thing as before. This is the name of the, you know, the main index file. But now you see it says template folder equals views. So that should mean look for index.html in the views folder. Let's see if that worked. That worked. Okay. So what I did previously, this was actually the same. There's nothing different here. It's just that I didn't have this line up top. Okay. So I wasn't telling it where to look for the index.html file. But now that I have, you know, this template folder equals views, it's going to look for it will now look for a folder called views and render the template index.html, and then we're kind of good. And then so it spits back out this content. Notice you still need a return value. If you don't do that, because what you want to think is like this render template just returns a string, which is all the HTML that we have here. So if you forget to have return, well then you're not returning anything from this function, right? You're not returning that string and it's going to break. Let me see the question. No, I think we're okay. Yeah, I get what you mean. Maybe by default it is called templates, Conwell. All right, so the template folder is views for here, right? And kind of like we're pointing out, we can call this something different probably. Like we could call this templates, and then we can rename this templates. They just have to match, right? And now if we refresh, we're still good. But for now, you can just call it views. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I think we can actually get rid of this template folder argument, and it will by default look for the templates folder.
That might be true. That might be true. So Conwell's saying, hey, if we don't have this and we just call this templates, That's probably true. That it will by default look for the index.html inside the templates folder. Let's check that, and that works. That does work as well. Either way is fine with me. Let's just call it templates for now. Cool. All right. The reason why it's called a template, by the way, is because you can put, like here everything is, static, but you can also put like dynamic, Python in here. What you do is you have the two squiggly brackets on either side, and I can just do like 1 + 1. And you see that? It spits out 2. So this is just Python, right? Like we could do, like any kind of Python would work. I think. You see that? So you can just spit out Python here. Now, normally the way you work with something like this is, let's say let's have a folder for like player. Right? And now we want to, let's say this is a player's name that we're going to pass through. Now, now we want to render a template. And the file we want to render is this player.html file, right? Which is located under templates, which is where we say to look for it. And now let's say we want to have, well, we can kind of have the same thing here, but now let's say we want to do something like div, and all the stats about our player. So this will be, we could put directly in here like Sidney Crosby, but if you think about it, in a real website, kind of like what we want to have happen is, we'll go to like Sidney Crosby, and it will maybe pull information about him, and the template, like the actual, if we go to ESPN, let's look at it. Right, if you take a look at one player, here's the player, here's his, his number, here's his position, this is the team he's on, and then we go to another player, like Sean, Flyers guy. You see the same exact kind of template, right? Here's his name, here's his number, here's his position. So the idea is, when you go to one ID, maybe this will like pull up information from the database about one guy and place it in there. And then when you pull up another guy, it pulls up the corresponding information and places it in there. So how do you accomplish something like that? Well, here maybe you'll take the argument like name equals name, So think about what happens. We're going to go to ESPN.com, I'm sorry, this URL /NHLplayer/Bob. Now, it's going to take this value, Bob, and it's going to come through as a parameter here. Then we're going to call our function with it, NHL Players. It's going to do render template player, pass through the name. This is just a keyword argument, right? So this is the value that we're passing through. It's Bob right here. And then we're saying, okay, I get to inside this function, I get to reference it as name. So now, how do I reference this? From the player.html file. In the player.html file, I can use Jinja and put in the name. So the important thing is, this value right here has to line up with this thing right here, where we just defined a keyword argument that's going to be read in. And now, if I go to /Bob, you see that? It has Bob's information. If I go to like Sydney, right, it has that information. How did that work? Right? It's taking the parameter here, getting it, passing it through, calling the function with it, and then calling this function with it, right? And then player, rendering this, and then here's my Jinja. Okay? That makes sense? And then in a real kind of example, probably more what would be realistic is you take the name and you do something like this, select all from players, right? And then you get all the attributes, right? Like the name, the age, his birthday, whatever. And then you pass that through as multiple arguments. And then over here, let's just set a value. First, we'll just hard code a value. It was August 12th. And now here you take the player and you just, put that Jinja here. Okay? So you kind of imagine, see how it works. Someone says, hey, I want to find out information about Bob. It makes the select statement. It gets back this select statement. We get everything about that player, meaning all the columns, all those attributes, the name, the birthday, and we take that information, we pass it through here, and then it gets placed in the right position. That's the same way that happens over here. And pass it through. So now I broke it. Why did I break it? Select. Oh, because I have this uncommented. Oh, it's reading this for whatever reason, so I'll just delete it. Yeah, can you see that? So this is really how websites are being built, right? It's not like we don't have a separate HTML page for every player that exists. We just kind of create the format, the template, and then fill in the correct data. All right, so that's what's going on here. And it's the same thing if it's JSON data. Like we won't have a HTML, but we'll do the select statement and return the corresponding JSON. So that's the idea. Questions about this?